The lecture hall buzzed with the chatter of dozens of species, each one unique in form and voice. Professor Zelenari glided to the front, her shimmering blue skin catching the light from the ceiling panels. With a graceful flick of her upper arms, she activated the projection screen behind her. "Greetings, Section 12, she said in her melodic voice. The noise tapered off as the students turned their attention forward. "Today we begin a new unit examining apex life forms from hazardous planets. These are creatures few ever encounter and even fewer survive." In the rear row, Marcus Chen sat quietly. He was the lone human among his classmates. Unlike the others, whose bodies shimmered, wriggled, or radiated with exotic traits, Marcus looked unassuming: brown hair, simple clothes, and an old-style pen, scratching notes onto paper. While most used neural interfaces or data globes, Marcus's analog method drew curious glances. Professor Zelenari pressed a key, and the screen displayed a violent red world cloaked in storms. "This is Kravos via Class 11 hostile environment. Triple gravity, caustic air, temperatures capable of liquefying alloyed steel." Gasps filled the room. Students instinctively shifted closer to each other. Marcus simply kept writing. "But the real threat," she continued, "is its wildlife." An image of a massive predator appeared, six-legged, armored, oozing green acid. "The Kravos hunter, 30 feet long, armor like neutron-forged plating. And it doesn't hunt alone." Whimpers came from a few students. A water breather slumped low in its tank, a tall gray being trembled faintly. Meanwhile, Marcus calmly raised his hand. "Professor, how fast do they move?" She blinked, surprised. 60 miles per hour, even under heavy gravity." Marcus nodded, jotting it down. Another question followed. "What do they eat?" "Anything they find. Organic, inorganic, they're always hungry." More sick sounds followed. One small student fainted, but Marcus stayed still, his curiosity undimmed. They moved on. "This," said the professor, showing a pair of glowing serpents slithering through violet foliage, "is the venomoon of Solarith. The smallest creature here can kill in seconds with a single bite, and our medicine has no counteragents." Again, Marcus raised his hand. "How do they avoid poisoning themselves?" A pause. "Excellent question. Their biochemistry neutralizes their own toxins." While the rest of the class struggled with fear, Marcus became more focused. He asked about reproduction, pack behavior, metabolism. Each question pushed the professor to reconsider the young human's strange fascination. As the lecture ended, she announced, "Tomorrow we will study the most feared world of all. So dangerous it's forbidden to even approach a Class 12 planet." Nervous chatter broke out, but Marcus simply packed his pen and paper with quiet anticipation, unaware that the most terrifying world in the galaxy was his own home. Professor Zelenthi tapped her control panel, and the screen flickered to life with a stark warning in glowing red letters. "Planet classification, Cataclysm class. Do not approach this world," she began, her voice solemn. "Was only recently identified. A top-level exploration team visited it. Half never returned. The survivors needed extensive mental restoration, and many still experience recurring psychological disruptions." Marcus Chen lowered his pen. It was the first time all morning he'd stopped writing. Something about the professor's unusually serious tone tightened his chest. "The environment is deceptively normal," Zelenthi continued. "Standard gravity, breathable air, temperate climates. But it is a facade. The world's ecosystems are hostile on a level that defies logic. Our artificial intelligences cannot even compute how life persists there." The screen revealed an image, a vivid world of swirling clouds, blue oceans, and green continents. "It appears inviting," the professor warned, "but do not be misled. This planet, catalogued as Solus 3 or Terra, contains more lethal species per zone than any other known biosphere." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Solus 3 Terra, the name stirred something deep in his memory, familiar, yet just out of reach. "Tomorrow," Zelenthi said, "we will analyze some of these lifeforms, beginning with the most astounding revelation. Sentient beings live there. Intelligent organisms that not only survive the planet's relentless dangers but have built civilizations on top of them." As students rushed from the hall in a wave of unease, Marcus sat frozen. Terra Solus 3. Why did those words feel like forgotten pieces of his own story? Marcus arrived early the next day, tension fluttering in his chest. He hadn't been able to sleep. The more he thought about those names, Terra Solus 3, the more he felt like he was forgetting something vital. The lecture hall filled slowly. Students looked anxious. One aquatic student's tank water had turned lavender from calming chemicals. Another hovered with trembling limbs, clutching a comfort wrap. Then the professor entered, carrying a biomonitoring device that blinked with red and blue lights. It would sound alarms if any student's stress levels became dangerous. "We've never needed one of these in class before," she said. Marcus glanced around. Everyone had their hand near the panic button on their desk except him. "Let us begin," said Zelenthi. "This is Terra." The same tranquil planet appeared on screen. Gorgeous, radiant, alive. It looked like a paradise, but the room was silent with dread. "This world orbits a yellow sun, the third planet from its star. That is why you'll sometimes see it called Solus 3. But what makes Terra so extraordinary isn't only its predators, it's the existence of an intelligent species that thrives there. They call themselves humans. Marcus's pulse surged. Humans, soulless, third planet, everything clicked. He wasn't just studying some distant alien world, he was from there. Terra was Earth. His Earth, the first organism we encountered. The professor said. Was this? An image appeared. A massive gray beast with blunt features and gaping jaws. This is known locally as a hippopotamus. It looks passive, but it's responsible for more annual fatalities than many apex predators combined. Nearly 4 meters in length, capable of charging at 45 kilometers per hour, and possessing one of the most powerful bite forces among land creatures. Students yelped. One fainted. Another emitted a high-pitched clicking. Marcus almost laughed. A hippo. They thought hippos were nightmare creatures. He remembered feeding them lettuce at a zoo when he was 6. They always made his little sister giggle, but he didn't say anything. Something told him that his perspective was not the norm here. Professor Zelenthi tapped again. A shark glided across the screen's leak. Deadly ancient. This predator, she said, has remained biologically unchanged for millions of cycles. It is already perfect. It can detect blood from kilometers away. Its bite pressure is equivalent to 12 metric tons. More buttons were pressed. Medical droids swarmed. One student collapsed onto their desk in a panic. Marcus stared. A shark. He'd seen real ones only in documentaries, but he'd been swimming in those same oceans many times. Shark attacks were rare, newsworthy even. He finally understood what made Terra so terrifying to the rest of the galaxy. It wasn't the monsters, it was that humans lived among them and called it home. And now, Professor Zelenithi said, we come to the most unsettling truth. Humans do not merely survive among these apex predators. They seek them out. She gestured to the display as the screen flickered again. They swim in the same waters as these creatures, willingly. For recreation, the classroom was half empty now. Medical staff had already escorted many students out, their minds unable to handle the imagery. Those who remained looked pale, or green, or quivering depending on their species. But it gets worse, she said, voice tightening. The screen changed. Again, a massive upright creature stood amidst trees. It had fur the color of dried soil, claws like hooked blades, and a snout that looked like it could tear through armor. This is known as a laroque, or as the locals call it, grizzly bear. It weighs over 360 kilograms, can outrun most land vehicles, and has claws long enough to shred stone bark. Marcus blinked. He'd seen documentaries about bears like that. Warnings, yes. Danger, yes. But people camped in bear country all the time. You followed rules, made noise, stored food properly. It wasn't insanity. The humans, the professor said, voice laced with disbelief, live in the same territories as these beasts. They build homes nearby. Some even study them directly, with visual recorders. A few even attempt to befriend them. One aquatic student's water tank was now stained crimson, not from injury, but fear. How do humans survive? One whispered. That, Professor Zelenithi said gravely, is still under investigation. Either they possess an unseen defense, or they are vastly more dangerous than they appear. Marcus's gut twisted. These aliens genuinely believed that humans were either walking miracles or walking weapons. Then the professor said, now for the most unsettling discovery of all. A new image appeared. A group of 4 bipedal beings, too large, too small, sitting on a blanket, eating, smiling, laughing. A family unit during a food gathering ritual called a picnic. Zelenithi said, her voice now barely above a whisper. Observe the background. Marcus leaned forward. Behind the family, peacefully grazing, were several 4-legged animals with antlers. They're known as deer, the professor said. Though they appear harmless, they are indirectly responsible for thousands of human deaths due to high-velocity vehicle impacts. Gasps echoed around the room. And yet the humans sit calmly among them. No defenses, no weapons, no protective barriers. Marcus began to understand the full scope of the disconnect. To these aliens, everything on Earth was a monster. Creatures humans grew up watching in nature documentaries were viewed here as agents of death. And worse, Marcus realized they were starting to suspect him. Professor Zelenothi's gaze lingered on him. You, she said carefully, never seem frightened. The remaining students turned to look. One student was shaking so badly his chair clattered against the floor. Another had turned a pale shade of blue. Everyone else had hovered close to the red panic button on their desks, but not Marcus. You ask questions no one else asks. You never avert your eyes. You called these beings animals. Marcus swallowed. He had. That was normal back home. Cats, dogs, bears, whales, van tigers, they were all animals. But here, the word carried a different meaning. Let us continue, the professor said, eyes narrowing slightly. The next image was a massive feline, orange with black stripes, gliding through tall grass. This is a Tigris panthera. It weighs nearly 270 kilograms and hunts alone. Its bite can crush reinforced bone structures. It can leap the length of a transport pod and run faster than any known prey on its world. Gasps. A few students flinched. someone whimpered. Marcus remembered visiting the zoo and watching a tiger nap in the sun. He recalled his science class building a project on tiger conservation. They'd been endangered, once, now protected. They are apex predators, the professor continued. And yet, humans coexist with them, study them, photograph them. How do humans defend themselves? A trembling voice asked. Professor Zelenithi checked her notes, then looked back at Marcus. That, she said slowly, is the question we still cannot answer. Want to continue from here? I can help develop the next segment, perhaps a dramatic reveal, a confrontation, or Marcus speaking up, or help you compile this into a full short story ready for publication. Also, would you like this rewritten version in a clean, copyable format as a full file? Professor Zeverin dimmed the lights as the last holoscreen flickered to life. This class is the strangest ecosystem we've ever catalogued, she said. The screen showed a massive, scaled predator gliding through crimson waters. This creature can tear a vessel in half. And the locals, they swim in the same waters for fun. Half the classroom had already activated their emergency sedatives. The rest looked close to collapse. It gets worse, Zeverin whispered, tapping another control. A towering furbeast appeared in a forest, its claws like blades, its eyes wild. This predator called a gravlar can run faster than our fastest drones, yet the natives build homes in its hunting grounds. They even study it. Sitting quietly near the back, a student with copper-toned skin and dark eyes stayed calm. His name was Ren. He watched the images without fear, almost like he missed the creatures. Zeverin narrowed her 4 eyes at him. Miran, you don't seem disturbed. I find it familiar. Miran replied carefully. Zeverin leaned forward. Do you know of these creatures? Miran hesitated, then stood. What if I told you I grew up among them? That these beasts to me were not nightmares but neighbors? The room froze. One student dropped their nutrient pod. You're from that planet, Zeverin gasped. The one we call Virel Prime, the untamable wild. Yes, Miran said, but we don't call it that, we call it home. Silence. Then, but how? How did you survive? Miran looked around at his classmates. We learned, we watched, we adapted. We taught our young to respect, not conquer, to listen, not flee. Zeverin's voice trembled. You mean you're not the apex predator? Miran shook his head. We're not the strongest or fastest, but we endure. That is our power. That's why we live with danger, not in spite of it, but because of it. The class stared at him, minds racing. He wasn't what they feared. He was something far more powerful. He was hope.